Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Thoughts at 3. My name is Ellie, and I am part of the schools team with Southampton City Mission. And I'm sure you might have watched one of these before, but let me explain if you don't know what's going on. We at Southampton City Mission would normally love to be in school right now, doing RE Question of Faith days, assemblies, Year 6 transition support. But of course, because of coronavirus, that's not the safest thing. So instead, we are coming to you live thanks to the internet. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, following us and liking us on Facebook and Instagram. It's all going along the bottom there. So today we are going to be continuing our People of God series, and today we will be looking at Deborah. So in a moment, I will tell you a little bit more about her. But for now, be thinking of any questions you might have to ask myself or another Ellie, my special guest for today. But first, I have a question for you. What kind of films do you like? I don't know about you, but I love watching films, and I'm really excited that soon the cinemas are going to open up again. Do you like funny films? Sad films, romantic films, action films? Maybe you're a big fan of the superhero films like I am too. Well, did you know that the Bible is actually full of all of these kinds of stories as well? There's action and adventure and sad bits and happy bits and joyful bits and some funny bits too. And I think that today's story, all about Deborah, is going to be one of my favourite stories that we've shared yet. And that's because it is a bit of an action adventure. And I think that Deborah is a bit like those superheroes that we can see in the movies as well. So let me tell you the story of Deborah. Now, there's a lot of different characters, people, plot going on in this part. So I've got my whiteboard pen ready to kind of mind map some of the key events so we remember it. So let me tell you about Deborah. She was a prophet. And we've talked about prophets before. Maybe you remember Jonah, who we did an assembly on a few days ago. A prophet is someone who hears God's messages and then tells them to other people. But Deborah wasn't just a prophet. She was actually a judge as well. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of judge we might have today who sits in a courtroom, maybe wearing a funny wig. These judges were more like tribal chiefs or leaders. And actually, it was pretty impressive that Deborah, a woman, was both of these things. One of the reasons I like this story so much. Now, there's a few more people I want to tell you about. We've got a not so nice man who was called Sisera. And I think I'm going to put a bit of an angry face by him. You see, Sisera was fighting all of the Israelites, God's people. So one day, Deborah hears a message from God, and she tells this message to the Israelites' army leader. His name was Barak. She tells this message that God had told her. It says, "Take your soldiers into battle, and God will bring Sisera to the river, and there God will give you victory." Well, Barak wasn't so sure about this. Sisera was scary. In fact, his army was huge. He was meant to have 900 chariots. So Barak said, "I'll go if you come with me, Deborah." Sometimes we always need a friend to give us a bit of encouragement. Deborah says, okay, she'll go with you, but know that Barak, you're not going to be the one who's going to get credit for this victory. A woman will. So, unsurprisingly, all that Deborah said came true. All that God told her. The Israelites, they did defeat all of Sisera's men, even though they weren't as big. However, Sisera managed to escape. All the other men were defeated, but he ran away. That is until he came across a tent where another woman was. Her name was Jael. In fact, maybe we should draw a little tent too, because that's where she was. It was actually this woman, Jael, who was the one who defeated Sisera. She was quite a clever woman. She managed to trick him into the tent, and then she killed him. And I won't go into too much detail, but I did say the Bible had some gory stories too, and this one even involved a tent peg, which is how Jael managed to defeat Sisera. And so, the rest of Deborah's story, which you can read about in the book of Judges in the Bible, is all about Deborah and Barak singing a song, telling of all these amazing events, how they defeated Sisera and his army, and how God was there with them. And this whole song is all about praising God. So, that's just a little bit of information for you about Deborah. I know we've got a few people coming to say hello, so we'll do a few comments. Hello to Charlie and Maggie, who are watching. Nice to have you join us. They've shared some of their favourite movies. Maggie, I agree with you there. I always love a Disney movie. And Charlie likes the Lego movie. Do you know, I'm not surprised about that. I think I know that both you and your dad are big Lego fans. Thanks for joining in though. Everyone else who's watching live, make sure you put your comments, say hi, and any questions you might have about Deborah. Because what we're going to do now is I am going to invite our guest, Ellie, to come and join us. And she's going to have a go at answering some of your questions. Hello, Ellie.
Hi.
Ellie, I wonder if you could introduce yourself to everyone who's watching. Who are you? What do you do?
Of course. Well, there's two Ellies. There's two of us today. Funny. And I work at St Barnabas Church in Winchester as the youth worker. So I run youth clubs, I go into schools, and I just really love working with young people.
Fantastic. And we were just talking before about how you really miss going into school.
Yeah, really miss everybody.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got some questions about Deborah that I would love for you to try and answer, and we might even get some extra questions from anyone who comments their question live. My first question for you is, who are the judges? We heard about Deborah being a judge, and her story is in the book of Judges in the Bible. So who are these judges?
Good question. So at this point in the story of the Bible, the Israelites were just formed as like a nation, but they didn't have a leader, they didn't have a king, and they would always be turning away from God's ways and the things that God told them to do. They'd just get themselves into so much trouble. And in their trouble, they would cry out to God for help. And because God is so loving, and his ears are so attuned to the cry of his chosen people, he would always hear that cry, and he would raise up a person to be a leader for the Israelites, someone who could lead them into the ways of God, into safety and comfort. And these people were called judges. And the book of Judges lists these different people that God rises up every time the nation of Israel are a bit in trouble. And Deborah is one of them. And then eventually Israel starts to cry out to God and go, we want a king like the other nations. And God says, but I'm your king. But he relents, and God does give them a king. He gives them King Saul and then King David, who I think you've already talked about. And we know that King David, his great grandchild, is Jesus himself, who is like the ultimate king of all time. So but we're in the period of the judges, of the people that God raised up to help guide Israel into God's ways.
Fantastic. So my next question for you, as we are talking about a woman in the Bible here, is why are there not so many women in the Bible?
Yeah, so it's true. There are a lot more stories about men in the Bible. But what we need to remember is the Bible was written thousands of years ago. It's a really ancient book. And back then in history, women weren't given the same importance as men. They didn't have the same power or authority. They weren't really treated as equal to men at all. But the Bible, including stories like Deborah, but also people like Mary and Ruth and Naomi, that is really incredible because other books at this time in history would not have mentioned women at all. So the fact that the Bible has these stories in them is really amazing, and shows us that God really, really cares about women just as much as men. And even Jesus himself, when we go to the Gospels, the way he treated the women around him as friends and as leaders alongside the male leaders shows us that God really cares both for men and women, and calls both men and women to be leaders and followers of him.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I've got one more question for you, but we do have some coming in through the live chat too. So
Great.
my question for you is, what can we learn from Deborah's story? What do you think we can take away from this ancient story and make it relevant to our lives today?
Well, I love the story of Deborah because in the story, she is portrayed as such a strong female leader, isn't she? And so, so brave. When Barak says, "Oh, I'm not going into battle unless you do," she doesn't shy away. She goes with the men into battle. That's so brave and so courageous. And I think especially for us girls today, what a great example she is to us of courage and bravery, and the fact that God called Deborah to be a leader back then, and he is calling girls today to be leaders too. So I want to be a Deborah.
Me too. I love that so much. So we have got some comments coming in. In fact, one I think you just kind of mentioned. Charlie would like to know, why did Barak get scared and he had to go and ask Deborah to come with him, even though it was something God told him to do?
Yeah, well, this Sisera king must have been a very scary person. I think he probably smelled trouble from this guy, and maybe from his point of view, it didn't look like they were going to win this battle. But Deborah, you see, she hears God, and she heard God say, "I've got this battle. I will help you win it." And she put her confidence and her trust in God's word, which I think shows how brave she was. So it was only when Deborah sort of comes alongside him that they go into battle together. So I think he's spurred on by her confidence in God.
Fantastic. And I think we all need that sometimes. Might be being scared, but having a friend who's encouraging us and has reminded us to trust God is sometimes much needed. Well, we have one final question coming in, which is Maggie, and she would like to know, why did Deborah and Jael fight the baddies?
Yeah, well, I think because, again, they heard God. Deborah heard God call her to gather the armies together, and as the judge, as the leader, I suppose she took on that responsibility, and didn't want to just send other people into the fight. She went in with them, and God was always kind of protecting Israel really against their enemies, against these kings who were no good. And so they kind of fought these battles to protect God's chosen people.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, Maggie and Charlie, I hope that answered your questions. Ellie, we are nearly coming to the end, so I want to say thank you so much for joining us. is there anything else you would like to say before we go?
Just be brave and courageous like Deborah.
Fantastic.
That would be my word of encouragement.
We will see you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ellie, for joining us. Some fantastic answers there. In fact, Charlie and Maggie would both like to say thank you, Ellie and Ellie, although I feel like the other Ellie definitely gave us some brilliant answers there. Well, I want to take the moment now to say a prayer. You probably know that this is something we always like to do, whether we're in school or doing an online assembly. It is completely optional. You don't have to join in. But if you would like to, maybe spend a moment thinking of these words. Maybe think about how Deborah could affect your life. Do you want to be more like her, this person of God? And then if you do agree with the words I say, you can say Amen at the end, because that just means I agree. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for all the amazing women in the Bible, including Deborah. Thank you for her example of wisdom and leadership and bravery. Please help us to learn from the people of God, choose to turn away from choices, but choose to follow you, just like all the judges taught. If you would like to agree, you can say Amen. Well, I want to let you know about tomorrow's Thoughts at 3, which will be Matt back again. That is Friday, the 26th of June. And this will be our last Thoughts at 3 in our People of God series. But don't worry, we will be back the following week, where we will be doing some special Year 6 moving on focused assemblies, so not to be missed. But make sure you do join Matt tomorrow at 3 o'clock, where he will be sharing all about Mary Magdalene. That is actually one of those women that Ellie just mentioned, a close friend of Jesus. So start thinking about any questions you might have about Mary and make sure you join us tomorrow. That is 3 o'clock, Friday the 26th of June. And now I'm going to say a brilliant rest of your day. Enjoy the sunshine, but make sure you stay safe, and I will see you again soon. Goodbye.